Welcome to part 2 of our Deluge and iPad love story.
Hold me close and hold me fast. This magic spell you cast. This is La Vie en Rose.
If you haven't seen part 1, I recommend you to watch it first, as you will then have a basic understanding of how everything is connected in my setup. In today's video, we will cover more advanced topics and some tips and tricks to have you covered. Each topic is more or less independent from the others, so I added time marks to the video for you to jump to the topics you are more interested in. So we have all our devices connected to the USB hub using USB Midi, and the hub to the iPad, and the audio from all our synths and the Deluge to the USB interface. We open AUM and then this bloody noise from hell can ruin your experience. With all your devices perfectly connected, ready to jam, you put your headphones on, and then all you hear is this annoying buzz, where there should only be silence. Where does that come from? Well, one clue. If one device is an audio source at the same time as USB Midi, you are getting close to the culprit. What I have found is that the Deluge is pretty vulnerable to USB ground loop noise when you are using USB Midi and the audio interface is connected to the same hub. You can get this noise, and what is worse, I found that some unwanted audio from the main mix could bleed into the line-in when sampling. But now it's when most of the USB audio interfaces comes to the rescue. They usually provide Midi-in ports. So what I did was not using USB for the Deluge, which seemed to be the easy and logical thing to do. Instead, I connected it to the power with a 9V adapter and used regular Midi-in cables directly to the back of the audio interface. All the rest of Midi controllers, which are connected to the powered USB hub, as they don't provide audio, they don't cause any problems. The Typhon is known to produce USB humming noise, so I power it with a USB cable connected to an independent plug, and use this Midi-in to USB adapter. Ground loop noise disappeared completely. In case you cannot remove that noise, what you can do is use an app called Bruise Free. With this app, you press the Learn button, and then the noise disappears. As we are talking about creating a noise-free setup, we have to talk about one other common issue with the Deluge. There are posts about the Deluge sounding bad and somehow distorted when you start adding tracks to the mix, and that is due to it running out of headroom. The solution is keeping all your track levels relatively low. I usually set my main volume to maximum, and then set all the clip levels around as low as 15 or 20 out of 50. I will then control the volume of the Deluge to the main mix using the gain knobs of the USB audio interface, setting it to a level in which it doesn't clip. The default level for newly created audio clips is 19, which is within our optimal range. So I adapted my AUM template so the levels coming to the sampling bus match the levels from the rest of the mix. That way, what I hear on my headphones, once recorded in an audio track of the Deluge, will sound at the exact same volume level, making the transitions between live played instruments and recorded audio loops seamless. So now that we have all our Midi devices connected to the iPad, how can we route everything? Well, it turns out that AUM already provides a Midi routing matrix. You can open it by pressing the button on the top right. On the top you have the input ports, and on the right you have the output ports. You make a connection by clicking on a square on the matrix. I make my launch key and launch control XLs send Midi to the Deluge, so I can Midi learn the keyboard and the knobs and faders to Deluge parameters. And I also connect them to the Midi control port of AUM, so I can control parameters inside AUM. You may wonder why the Deluge is also sending Midi to the launch key, but it is only to make the keyboard receive the main clock, so the arpeggiator syncs with the song tempo sent by the Deluge. If you want to add more iOS devices to the setup, you can sync them using Bluetooth. For that, I used Midi Flow app. You have to open the app in the master device. Then you go to Config and click on Advertise this device. You open the application on the second device. Click Config and find nearby devices. Now that both are connected, you can define MIDI routes with conditions. Then on the first device, you select which devices are going to send MIDI to the second one. In this case, I select my launch key and also the Deluge. And in the output port, I select the iPad that I just connected. But why do I use another iPad in the setup? Well, there are two reasons. I love GarageBand instruments, and they are not AUV3 compatible, and the MIDI implementation is really poor. They react to every MIDI channel and every MIDI device, so it is impossible for them to be part of a larger setup. What you are hearing is the second iPad that is sending audio through the USB audio interface, through channels 5 and 6, and now it is part of our AUM session. The second reason is that there are some apps that are not AUV3 compatible, like this one, for example, Baby Scratch. And I cannot use it in the first iPad as it won't get recorded inside AUM. So I connect it to the second iPad to a stereo input of the audio interface, and it will be recorded within AUM.
Scratch on the
A lot of music apps feature Ableton Link, AUM being the most important one here. Don't be afraid, you DAWless people. Ableton Link is just a protocol for synchronizing clock and transport commands between apps. You don't need to be running Ableton software at all. Although Ableton Link is great, and having AUM as the master clock for everything is pretty easy to set up, if you are like me and want the Deluge to be your main clock and tempo, I first tried with Midi Link Sync. In this app, you select Midi to link, and then you select which is your main clock, in this case the Deluge. You enable sync, and now when the Deluge sends a clock, it will then translate to Ableton Link. The problem with this app is that it doesn't translate transport commands, only the clock. So I found an app that does both, which is Audio Bus. Audio Bus is similar in some aspects to AUM, but I find AUM more powerful, so to keep using AUM, I will just use Audio Bus for its capability to sync clock and transport to Ableton Link. Let's see how to do it. You go to Settings by clicking the small gear button at the bottom. You go to Sync Settings, enable Ableton Link, then go to MIDI Clock Sync and select the device that is going to be the main clock, in this case the Deluge. You enable Audio Bus Start-Stop and everything is set up. It is important that you set up at least one always active channel in Audio Bus. If not, the app will go idle and transport commands will stop being sent. That is why I add at least one input from the audio interface here in Audio Bus. And as the output, you select AUM. Setting all the routings, audio levels and MIDI mappings is a lot of work, so I did a template in the Deluge and a template in AUM, so I can load them and be ready for creating a track within seconds. On my Deluge, my template track is called 00.session_template, and it's as simple as 7 MIDI tracks. 1 through 6 are mapped to these 6 channels on AUM, and also learned to the keyboard. For example, this one is the piano, channel 1, and the 7th channel is for the Typhoon. In AUM, my first track is the master track, in which the output goes to monitors and headphones. It is receiving from bus A. I have an instance of Turnado to affect the entire mix, a low pass and a high pass filter, and a compressor which is Rough Rider 3, which is free on the App Store. I use the preset just a little bit off the top because it just adds a little bit of compression and makes everything sound a bit better. Next is the Bass B, which is for resampling to the Deluge. The output is USB 3 and 4, which is the cable that I connected to the line in. Next one is the Master Effects with a reverb loaded. So on any channel, if you increase this knob, you will send to the reverb. I have it mapped to these ones. I have also mapped the faders on the launch key to control the 6 channels. I have set up here a Midi CC in toggle mode, and it is mapped to the Bass B send. So if I click here, the Bass B is engaged to maximum. If I click again, it's going to 0. This is a way of enabling resampling to the Deluge. The iPad can provide you with an extra tool that is to do multitrack recording of your live performances. It can do that within AUM. All you have to do is engage every channel record button of the channels you want to be recorded to audio files. And whenever you click the record button on the top bar, the tracks will be engaged and start recording. The resulting audio files will show up later in the files browser. In case you just want the final mix as a stereo track, all you have to do is engage the record button on the master output track. And when you click record, it will start recording your final mix. As you see, even though you want to go completely DAWless, don't be afraid of giving an iPad or an iPhone an opportunity to be part of your setup. They are really useful devices. They can help you to easily interconnect all your gear, audio and MIDI-wise, and which can boost your workflow and creativity. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. I will also be uploading new live jams using this Deluge and iPad combo. I hope that you found this video useful. Thanks for watching.